What is up, guys? Salt House here. Today I thought I would do a PvP tier list for the first season of Dragonflight. I put all the tanks in the not related to this video category because if I do like an RBG breakdown, that'll be a different video. But for right now, we're going to be focusing on 3v3 Arena. Um, so let's jump on in and let's try to see if we can make a decent tier list that hopefully nobody will be too upset about. But without further ado, let's get into it. So Frost Death Knight and Unholy, I think, are going to be interchangeable with each other. Just depends on how the Death Knight wants to play the game. They're both good options. They both do good damage. They have amazing CC now. With having blind on Unholy is actually insane. Um, but both options for Death Knight are going to be pretty good. I think they're pretty equal though. They're they're tanky too, so I'm gonna put them in A tier. They don't really die. They do a lot of damage, and their utility is just awesome right now. So it's a really good choice to pick up right now. And then we have the Havoc Demon Hunter. I'm gonna put that in S tier. I don't know if it's gonna get nerfed anytime soon, but Havoc is just a monster of a spec right now. It just does infinite damage. It has a lot of sustain. It doesn't die really. Uh, only way to really kill it isn't a stun. Other than that, you're just going to be hitting into blur the entire game, darkness, or whatever. They just have so many buttons to press to stay alive. It's just a really good, well-rounded class. So, and it just, like I said, does infinite damage, and it can play with quite a few comps. You have Shadow Priest, Demon Hunter. You have Warlock, Demon Hunter, Warrior, Demon Hunter, uh, Hero Cleave, which is Death Knight, DH. Tons of options. They're just all well round class right now. Uh, Boomkin, I'm gonna put in B tier. I'm not seeing very many of them right now. Their damage is kind of It's not anything special. In Shadowlands, I think they're in a lot better spot. Hopefully they get some buffs soon because I like playing with boomies. Um, but I just don't think that they're going to perform like they did last expansion, at least not right off the rip. So there may be some hope if you're a Moonkin main. But for right now, I'm going to put you kind of like in the middle of the pack right now. Then next we have Feral Druid. Feral Druid, I'm going to put in A tier. It has an amazing toolkit right now, and it can play with some pretty good comps like Jungle. And then you have Kitty Cleave. It's just going to be a little different this expansion, though. I think they're going to be more of like a dampening spec. Like Kitty Cleave is probably going to be a dampener for sure. Um, but I still think they're going to perform pretty well in 3v3. All right, Devastation Evoker. Now, some people might think I'm crazy, but I'm going to put this probably on the top of the B tier. They do really good damage. They have an amazing toolkit for how simple it is. But they do die pretty easy if you don't press the buttons perfectly. Um, the only thing they really have going for them is a big one-shot build. But you can, I'm starting to see people getting used to how it's set up, and you can kind of avoid it if you know what you're doing. So I'm gonna put it in B tier. It could be like low A, but for right now, we're just gonna keep it right there. Beastmaster Hunter, and I'm gonna just do survival at the same time. I'm gonna put them both in B. um, they're they're like mid tier right now because their damage is okay. Their toolkit is pretty much the same as it's always been. Jungle is still gonna be a decent comp. Um, but you can't really go wrong with playing Hunter just because it has a few comps it can play. But I don't think they're going to be as crazy as they were like season 3 and season 4 of Shadowlands. But I think you can still hit Gladiator with it. I mean, there's plenty of amazing Hunter players out there that have proven that. So, with the pre-patch solo shuffle and all that jazz. But I think it's still going to be able to climb. I would actually put them like right here, definitely ahead of Boomkin. Marksman, I'm going to put at C tier. It just doesn't do anything to you. Uh, it's it's kind of suffering from the lack of modifiers that it had in Shadowlands. It just was able to one shot you pretty much every time it had a cooldown. But since all those modifiers are pretty much gone, they're kind of like hitting you with a pool noodle now. So it's a nice change for like everyone else because they were so broken. But I would definitely say that like if you're gonna main hunter, I would go for like survival or BM over marksman. It's just not in a good spot right now. But if you do like marksman, don't be afraid to try it because you just never know. It could be a skill gap thing too. If you're really good at marksman, you can obviously still climb. So. But that's where I'm gonna put it in what I think is gonna be meta. Arcane mage, I'm gonna put in A. I'm gonna say these two right here, Arcane and Feral, are pretty close to each other. Arcane has an amazing toolkit, and they do so much damage. It's actually insane. Um, I think they're gonna be in a pretty good spot for this expansion, just overall. I know it's pretty early to say that, but just the way that Blizzard has revamped the spec, I think that they're wanting mages to kind of play a spec that's been dead for so long. But it's definitely a good choice. It's a good one to pick up right now and gear before like the real season starts. Get used to it. You'll be able to climb with it. Let's see. We got Fire Mage. I'm gonna put Fire Mage probably because we're talking about 3v3 guys. We're trying to like think about it and how it's played in a comp. Um, I'd put it like here because you still will have RMP. Rogues got all their damage back. Not many people have been talking about it, but all their stuff got unnerfed. Basically, they're doing insane amount of damage right now. So RMP is gonna be back on the board, unfortunately. But it is what it is. But Fire Mage is gonna be in an okay spot, just because of the comp. And then Frost Mage, I'm gonna put it right behind Fire, just because it's kind of limited on comps that it can play with. It does decent damage. It's more of like an RBG or a BG padding class, but obviously, if you're like a high end player, you can climb with any of these specs. But this list is more based around like average players and what the meta is going to be, so they can kind of get an idea of how good classes are. So I would definitely put it there. Composition wise, it's just lacking. If you guys have noticed, I moved the healers like down at the bottom because I'll kind of go over them in a different video. Right now, we're gonna focus on the DPS. Windwalkers, um, they still do a decent amount of damage. I'm actually gonna put them. I'm gonna put them here above the Evoker DPS class. They still have a really good burst. In between goes, they kind of are weak, but they do have a lot of kiting abilities, which makes them good. They have a couple of good comps that they can play with. They can play Mongo Cleave, which is warrior, Windwalker, or they can play Walking Dead, which is Death Knight, Windwalker. That's gonna be a pretty good comp, I think. Um, but overall, they're kind of in the higher end of the middle of the pack. just because of comps. And they do have a really strong burst, and they have off heals for their teammates, so it's always nice to have a hybrid. Retribution Paladin, I'm probably gonna put it here between uh, Beastmaster and Fire. I haven't seen very many reps, and they're not one-shotting people anymore. Their damage is still really good, but the problem is that it's going to be kind of hard to play Ret Warrior, I think, in this expansion, just because Warrior doesn't have Safeguard anymore. Um, like the nerfs defensively to Warrior kind of nerfed Ret Warrior in general, but you could still play Cupid and climb with that. But I'm not sure. It's kind of up in the air where Ret Paladin's going to be. It might fly under the radar and be S tier eventually. Who knows? But as of right now, and how many I've seen, I'm going to put it kind of in the middle of B. Shadow Priest is definitely S tier. Amazing toolkit, super high damage. I actually put it above Demon Hunter, to be honest. Um, it just has amazing potential, and it's going to be all over the ladder. They buffed it in all the right areas. It's kind of a nice change to see Shadow kind of be on top right now. Um, I think it'll do great this season. One of the best comps I think is going to be Shadow Play or DH Shadow Priest, but I'm definitely keeping it in S tier. And then next we have the Rogue specs. With the recent buffs, they've kind of evened out the playing field of these three specs. Whereas before, subtlety was kind of like on the low end of things, and then outlaw was in the middle. I'm going to probably put assassination in S tier, or actually, I'm gonna put it like here, like high A, the highest A for right now. Um, just because its damage is awesome. The way they've made the spec is just perfect, in my opinion. It's going to do really well with like Arcane. I think that's going to be like the newer version of RMP, but time will tell. But as a spec alone and the comps it can play, it's definitely like high end. These two specs I'm going to place at the same time. I'm going to put them probably right here. Actually, I'll do that. Yeah, that's better. I'm going to put them high B. They're both going to perform well. Like I said about Assassination, it has really good comp options. Um, and they buff their damage basically back to normal. So you can't go wrong with playing Rogue this expansion. Rogues have always been good. They're always going to be good. They're always going to be like top of the middle or A or S tier. So both the specs just do insane damage. Good sustain. They have really good comps to play with. So all right, looks like we're getting to more casters here. So Elemental, I'm gonna put it here, an A. It has amazing damage. I'm actually gonna put it here just for this next point I'm about to make. Is the sustain on it, like staying alive, um, is kind of an issue for it against melee cleaves, but its output is insane. But it really needs a good comp to kind of carry it along. But the damage itself that it's doing right now, I'm gonna put it in A tier. Enhancement Shaman's got a few nerfs recently that kind of put him, I'd say, like probably here, the middle, lower end of B. They're not doing crazy amounts of damage. They do have good self healing, but they're just not popping off, like Death Knights are. Their damage is kind of underwhelming at times, but they have a couple comps they can play. But then again, it's kind of nerfed again because Warrior defensively was nerfed. so it makes it a little more difficult to play Turbo right now. But we'll see. They may end up buffing it, but for right now, that's where it's going to stay on my list. These Warlock specs are kind of insane right now. All of them are, besides Destro. Affliction is just crazy still. It's just like pre-patch, just a little bit dummied down. Not as crazy damage because of all the Shadowlands modifiers on top of it, but it still does amazing like spread damage. Demonology is definitely S tier. It's unkillable. It summons a literal army that you can't even see what's going on your screen. It does really good damage. Doesn't die. Has good peels for other classes with fear and whatnot. Um, Overall, Warlock is looking pretty darn good. Destruction, I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it probably like below the Hunters. It has its moments where it does really good bursts of damage, but it's just nowhere near what Affliction and Demonology are right now in terms of survivability and just spread damage and overall sustained damage. So it's kind of crazy to think that you would choose Destro over these two when their burst is the same, if not more, and they just live longer. And here's where it kind of gets a little tricky. I've actually seen quite a few arms warriors now, whereas they weren't existent in pre-patch or really on beta. Um, but I'm gonna put arms probably. I'm gonna put it like right here. It has the potential. It's doing the damage. It's really putting in work. Has a great toolkit, a lot of self healing. But the problem is it lacks defensively. And I know that's crazy hearing that about arms, but with D stance still being nerfed and ignore pain being removed from the game, arms warriors just kind of flop now. Um, the only reason they're holding this position at all on my tier list is because their damage is still up there. So, and then we're gonna be looking at the Fury Warrior, and I would put Fury right here on A. Slaughterhouse, you can't go wrong with it. A 40% MS pretty much the entire game. Um, I've been testing some single-minded Fury, and even that's just pumping. It does really good damage right now. Self-healing is absolutely insane. It has decent peels for teammates. If you play it with Kitty Cleave, it's really good. If you play it with the TSG, which I think will be a Warrior's best comp this expansion, because Death Knights don't die and Fury doesn't die, I think you will climb pretty easily. But if you're trying to play with like Caster, it's gonna be a little more tricky. But I think it's doable. I know that I'm gonna be trying to play Kitty Cleave, Arcane, Mage, and Fury Warrior. Maybe a little bit of TSG here and there, but I think it's a pretty good spec for Warrior right now. I would like to see Arms be the main PvP spec, but you gotta deal with what you're dealt, right? So Fury is definitely A tier, and I think that concludes my DPS tier list. Um, Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. But I think this is a pretty solid one, and I hope most people will agree with it. I'm not trying to like shut down anyone's class by preference. I'm just going based off of what I've been seeing in the battlegrounds as of right now. Gathered information from the beta and pre-patch. Um, but as of right now, this is where I think the meta stands. And I hope this helped someone in choosing a class if they were kind of up in the air about something. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you guys are enjoying the content. You can always catch me live at salt_house on Twitch. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Peace.